He was supposed to be Liverpool's next superstar, a weapon of chaos. A striker who could terrify defenders with pure power, pace, and hunger, but somewhere between the expectations and the memes, between the price tag and the pressure, between the promise and the reality, something broke. This isn't the story of a flop. This is the story of a footballer. Touch becomes a joke. Every mistake becomes a trend. And every moment of brilliance is forgotten the very next day. Darwin Núñez doesn't just battle defenders. He battles noise. He battles doubt. He's become the Premier League's biggest question mark. Is Darwin really the problem? Or is the problem deeper, darker, and hidden inside Liverpool's chaos? This is not just football. This is pressure. This is psychology. This is the truth behind Darwin Núñez, and the story nobody wants to tell. When Darwin Núñez first walked into Melwood, it felt like a new era had begun. Liverpool weren't just signing a striker, they were signing a statement. A €85 million reminder to the world that Klopp wasn't done competing, not yet. Darwin arrived with the kind of energy that makes stadiums believe again, a runaway train, a force of nature, a striker built for chaos, built for intensity, built for the Premier League. At Benfica, he was unstoppable, a season filled with explosive goals, fearless runs, and a hunger that couldn't be coached. He didn't just play football, he attacked it. Every touch, every sprint, every shot felt like it carried the ambition of a kid who once had nothing. Liverpool fans saw those highlights and imagined the future, a front line with Salah, Diaz, and Nunez. Speed, chaos, destiny, a trio that could tear apart any defense in Europe. Klopp believed in him too. He didn't just see a striker, he saw a project. A rough diamond who could be polished into something terrifying. Someone who could redefine Liverpool's attack after Main's departure. And for a moment, it all looked perfect. His Community Shield goal against Manchester City, the wild runs, the energy. The attitude. Anfield roared because they thought they had found the next superstar. This wasn't hype. This was hope. Hope that Liverpool had found their next No. 9. Hope that Darwin would become the future of Klopp's system. Hope that the price tag would become irrelevant, forgotten, buried under goals and celebrations. Nobody expected perfection, but everybody expected a rise. Darwin wasn't just a signing, he was a promise that Liverpool would rebuild, a promise that the chaos would return, a promise that a new hero had arrived. But football doesn't work on promises, and the weight of one can crush even the strongest player. Because in football, the higher the expectations, the harder the fall. But football has a cruel habit. The moment it gives you hope, it tests you, and for Darwin Núñez, that test came faster than anyone expected. His first Premier League matches felt like a coin toss. One moment he looked unstoppable, bursting through defenses, creating danger out of nothing, playing with that raw, volcanic energy that made fans fall in love with him. But the very next moment, a heavy touch, a missed chance, a moment of lost composure. Then came the red card, a moment of frustration, a moment of pressure exploding inside him. And just like that, the media storm began. Every miss became a clip, every mistake became a meme, every bad touch became a trending joke. People didn't talk about Darwin the player, they talked about Darwin the chaos, Darwin the meme striker, Darwin the £85 million gamble. And slowly, painfully, the narrative changed. The excitement turned into doubt, the promise turned into questions, the belief turned into pressure. Darwin still created chances more than almost any striker in the league, but creation means nothing when the ball doesn't hit the net. Each miss chipped away at his confidence, each roar of the crowd felt a little heavier, each headline felt a little more personal. And the worst part, Darwin could feel the world watching him, waiting for him to slip, waiting for him to fail, waiting to laugh. He was no longer playing football, he was surviving it. For a young striker in a new country, new system, new expectations, the chaos didn't just begin on the pitch. It began in his mind, and once chaos enters a player's head, it becomes the toughest opponent they'll ever face. On the surface, it's easy to say Darwin Núñez is inconsistent, or wasteful, or not Liverpool quality, but the truth is much more complicated and far more human. Because Darwin's struggles aren't just about finishing. They're about fit, about system, about football evolving faster than a player can adapt. Under Klopp, Liverpool's attack wasn't just about scoring, it was about roles, chemistry, timing. Main, Salah, Firmino, they weren't just players, they were pieces of a perfect machine. But when Darwin arrived, that machine was already breaking. Liverpool were no longer the pressing monster they once were. Midfield legs were gone. Intensity was fading, the transitions weren't as sharp, the service wasn't as clean. And Darwin, he wasn't the kind of striker who could create his own chances out of nothing. He needed the system to work for him, but he came at a time when the system was falling apart. His runs were brilliant, but the passes came late. His movements were smart, but the midfield couldn't find him. His pace was deadly, but the team behind him no longer played at his speed. People called him chaotic, but chaos was exactly what Liverpool lacked and exactly what they didn't know how to control. Then there's the psychological side. First, mind second. So when the pressure mounted, when the price tag became a burden, when the stadium held its breath, every time he touched the ball, his instincts began to freeze, a split second of hesitation, a moment of doubt, a tiny voice saying don't miss. And that's all it takes for a striker's composure to collapse. This isn't a story of a bad player. This is a story of a player caught between expectation and evolution, between a system he doesn't fit and a spotlight he can't escape. Darwin didn't fail alone. He failed in the middle of Liverpool's transition, a storm he never created but had to survive. For Darwin Nuñez, the toughest opponent was never Manchester City, never Arsenal, never Manchester United. It was the voice inside his own head. Football fans see the missed chances, but they don't see the pressure behind them. They see the memes, but not the anxiety. They see the price tag, but not the weight it puts on a young player's shoulders. Darwin didn't join Liverpool as a superstar. He joined as a kid carrying the expectations of a global fan base. And every time he stepped onto the pitch, the world watched him like a spotlight that never turned off. Whenever he missed, he didn't just hear boos, he heard judgment. He heard criticism. He heard millions of voices telling him he wasn't good enough. And confidence is oxygen for a striker. Without it, every shot feels heavier, every touch feels sharper, and every step feels slower. But Darwin's battle wasn't just about football. It was about identity, about proving he belonged, about proving he wasn't a mistake. Klopp defended him, teammates supported him, and fans were divided. Some patient, some unforgiving. One group saw potential, the other saw a problem. And Darwin stood trapped between both. But the truth is simple. When a striker loses trust in himself, even the simplest finish becomes a mountain. Even the smallest mistake becomes a storm. This wasn't a collapse of ability, it was a collapse of belief. You could see it in his body language, the hesitation before shooting, the frustration after every miss, the way he looked to the sky, searching for answers nobody could give him. Darwin wasn't battling defenders, he wasn't battling tactics, he wasn't battling critics. He was battling himself, and that fight is the hardest one any footballer can face. But here's the part people forget. Darwin Núñez is still only at the beginning of his story. Behind the chaos, behind the misses, behind the pressure, there is a player with qualities you cannot teach. Speed that terrifies defenders, power that breaks defensive lines, movement that creates chance after chance, a work rate that any manager in the world would die for. And when you strip away the noise, the memes, the criticism, you see something rare, a striker who never hides, even after missing. He keeps making the same runs, he keeps demanding the ball, he keeps fighting. That alone makes him different from every flop label thrown his way. Because players who stop believing disappear, Darwin refuses to disappear. And that's why so many still believe the story isn't over. A new system, a new manager, a bit of patience, and Darwin could become one of the most dangerous forwards in Europe. The raw material is there, the hunger is there, the heart is there. He may never be elegant. He may never be clinical like Holland. He may never be the perfect system striker. But he can be something else, something special, something unpredictable, something defenders fear because they can't predict what comes next. Darwin's story isn't a fall, it's a transformation, a journey from chaos to control. And maybe, just maybe, the redemption arc is coming sooner than anyone expects. In football, every player carries a story. Some rise instantly, some fall and never come back. But then, there are the ones like Darwin Núñez, the ones who stumble, struggle, suffer, yet refuse to break. Maybe Liverpool expected too much, too fast. Maybe Darwin needed time that nobody was willing to give. Maybe he was never meant to be the perfect striker, just the honest one, the chaotic one, the one who plays with heart instead of calculation. And that's why his journey still matters. Because football isn't only about trophies, goals, or stats. It's about emotion, fight, redemption, and Darwin embodies all of that, raw and perfect and real. So before we call him a flop, before we judge him by misses, before we forget the human behind the number, Maybe we should ask a different question. Did Darwin fail Liverpool? Or was Liverpool never ready for a player like Darwin? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, his story isn't over. The chaos hasn't ended. The fire inside him hasn't gone out, and sometimes the players who fall the hardest rise even higher. This is Darwin Núñez, unpredictable, unpolished, unfinished, and his next chapter has just begun.